Today we've got the kind of clear, cold conditions that you need to attempt to make a lens out of ice. This is a large chunk of ice I harvested the other day from a creek. The problem is the other day it snowed, and the entire creek now is covered with snow, and it can be a problem. So finding clear ice is your #1 obstacle in creating an ice lens, and if it's clear and cold with no snow, it's not very hard. If it snows, you have to do a lot of searching. This is the large chunk of ice I have to carve the lens out of. It's about, well, maybe 3 inches thick at its thickest, but you can see from smashing this piece of ice out of the creek bed, the thickest part actually cracked up in there, and it won't probably work as an ice lens, so I'm going to have to go down in here where it's a little bit thinner. I figure if it can't be done under field conditions with natural ice, using the typical tools that somebody who's stranded in such a broken down situation would have, that it's not really an adequate test of the whole concept. I'm going to use only a Swiss Army knife, natural ice which is harvested on a stream. I'm going to make it in field conditions, no freezers, no chairs, no anything. I'm here in the woods, not far into the woods, but I feel it's an adequate test. The temperature is in the low 20s today, and it's a partially overcast day, typical winter weather here in Pennsylvania. I'm going to practice for a while on this smaller piece of ice so I can get my techniques down right, and then we'll go for a larger lens possibly. If this one doesn't work, we'll go for a larger lens with the larger piece of ice. This is another piece of ice which is from the same patch of creek, and it's got enough thickness that I can carve the shape I want. What I'm going for is to make a sphere of ice. The first time I tried this experiment, I did what seemed like the right thing to do, was to make a lens shape out of a piece of ice, and the refractive properties of ice are such that what you really want is a sphere, and that lens did not work. It did gather light, it did focus a beam, but not nearly as much as you would need to create fire. We already know that this is possible. I got this information off of Wildwood Survival. I'll have to give you the name of the man who wrote the article. It's an excellent article, and I'm just attempting to do this under field conditions, no freezer ice here, and we're going to see if we can get it done. Shaving ice with a Swiss Army knife is actually very easy. I'm using the saw and the Swiss Army knife to saw myself out the rough shape, because carving down the block of ice until you get to the thickest part in there is going to be a real chore, so I've got to remove the bulk of this ice with the saw. I find if I rock the saw back and forth, it actually cuts pretty good. If I keep it in one spot, it really does clog right up with ice. You really don't want to smash the ice, because you can get fractures that run through it. Will ruin any big chunk of ice that you hope to make into a lens. Working with the knife, I've got the thickest portion of the ice into a rough cube shape. Working towards the thickest part of the ice, I figure if I make myself a cube, I can just start rounding off corners. One thing I've noticed, it's very hard to hold the smaller piece of ice, and you want to start with the thickest piece of ice you can possibly find, and work your way towards the thickest part of it, because it uses a lot more ice than you think. We'll see if I can get this into an actual sphere. I don't know if a sphere about maybe a little over an inch thick is going to accumulate and concentrate enough light, but let's see. The shape I'm headed for here with this is a cylinder, and it occurs to me that if I could find a really big icicle and snap off a section of it, it would make this job a lot easier, because that's basically what I'm doing here, is making myself an ice plug. You can see the heat from my hand melts the exterior of the ice very, very fast, and it makes it impossible to work with. In fact, you cannot do this job without a good pair of gloves, because you can't hold the ice firm enough in your bare hand to do it. To shape this entire block of ice into a sphere with just heat from my hand, that would be nuts. The final polish, though, you can see when it gets wet, it gets very, very clear. Actually, it's quite good looking, and I have no problem believing that the optical quality of ice is clear enough to concentrate a beam of light. Okay, it's starting to shape up into a ball. I'm going to try and make this into a double-ended cylinder, sort of on the top and the bottom, so I can put a strap around the middle and have a nice way to hold on to it. I figure if both ends of it are optically clear and round, then the middle can be maybe a little straight and it'll still focus light. I've been working on this ice cube for a long time now, and I finally got it down to the point where I think I can shape it into an actual sphere, at least on both ends of it. I needed some way to hold on to the block of ice so that I could actually work on it and start using the heat from my hands to shape it into an optical lens. And I went around and my first attempt was to find a piece of vine and tie a loop in it, and this succeeded in launching my little ice ball off into the forest, into the snow, as soon as I tried to tighten it down. So that didn't work. And then it hit upon me. Okay, I'm wearing a pair of BDUs, and I've got that little ribbon down at the bottom that ties the foot. I thought maybe I could cut that out and use that, and then it occurred to me that the answer was literally staring me in the face, and I'm using the camera strap off my camera. Is that cheating? I don't know. I always take my camera with me into the bush, so I don't think so. It works. Any string would work for that, but that's the idea, is to have some way to actually hold this thing. And now I'm going to use the heat from my hand to gently shape the top of it. I think I'm down to the point where I won't freeze my fingers off trying to shape the ends of this thing into a lens. You can see it's getting very optically clear, and I think this is actually going to work. I'm very hopeful. This is going to look a little strange, but I've discovered the very best tool for putting the final polish on a nice lens is not the fingertips, it is the tongue. With your tongue you can feel every little high spot on the lens, and the heat from your tongue just melts it right away. Looks odd. Tastes like an ice cube. So one of the problems I'm encountering is as I'm holding it, you can see I'm getting out of round because the heat from my fingertips is actually melting the ice on that side where I've got to pinch this cord. So I'm going to probably shift to using my gloves and maybe let this thing refreeze a bit before I try anything more. I've lost my sun completely, and that is the main problem with this technique, is you've got to have perfect conditions. Everything has to come together in order to get it right. You've got to have really good sun conditions, really good ice conditions. You have to have a lot of patience. I personally think friction fire would be a lot easier in this forest right now than trying to make an ice sphere with the equipment I have and with the time I have and with the resources I have around me. This is not the most wise technique to try and do. It's more of a gimmick than a tactic, in my opinion. I have no doubt that it'll work, but we're going to have to get better sun in order to even give it a try. I'm going to leave my ice lens here in a shady spot because there's absolutely no sense in even trying this technique because the sky is completely overcast right now. So the idea here is just leave this for another time, and we'll come back to it if I get some sunshine later on today. I think it's formed to the point right now that I could actually work with it to try and focus a beam of light. We're going to have to try that when I actually have enough light to focus. Just to prove that I'm not completely insane, if you really want to make fire in the winter woods, and you carry the gear, and you make yourself a fire. Ferro rod, PJ cotton, that's all you need.